Hey there, welcome again to another week of Bible study. This week we're talking about the twins, Jacob and Esau. So hopefully you got your notepad ready. Let's go.
Okay. Now, like I said, you guys, we have a range of verses that we'll look over, but we gonna get it popping. So, notepads ready. I'll go ahead and share my screen and we'll get this moving. So, like I said, today we are talking about Jacob and Esau. Most people know the story um from Bible study, or not from Bible study, but from Bible Sunday school, things like that. But we're going to take a deeper look into the story as it pertains to us, because a lot of people just look at it for face value and just say, hey, story of the twins and Jacob and Esau, nothing big. But it's a lot deeper than that. It's the whole reason why 12 tribes of Israel come out of Jacob and not Esau, and how that happened since Esau was first born. But like I said, without further ado, let's get into it. So, continuing where we left off, in the last chapter, we had the death of Abraham, which was chapter 24. We had the death of Abraham and Ishmael and Isaac both burying him. We start to see the relationship between Ishmael and Isaac. It's complex. Both of them were sons of Abraham. However, their descendants found themselves in conflicts. The Ishmaelites and the Israelites always had territorial disputes and religious differences because of how they believed it pertained to Abraham. To the Israelites, Isaac was the promised child. But to the Ishmaelites, in the Quran, it actually has it that Ishmael was the child on the altar that Abraham was going to sacrifice, and he was the promised child, which now gives issues to who deserves the promised land, since they understand what the promise that Abraham was given by God. Now, Ishmael is considered the ancestor of the Arab people, and a direct ancestor, or a direct descendant of Ishmael, is the Prophet Muhammad. This is why it gives Ishmael an essential place in Islam, Islamic lineage and tradition, and why they follow the same Abrahamic religion that the Christians and the Jews do. Um, Ishmael himself understood he wasn't the promised child. However, because of the culture and the way that things worked back then, the firstborn was always supposed to be the one who got the inheritance, regardless of what happened. And we're going to see that this is something else that bleeds into Jacob and Esau's story as well. So, Isaac is the age of 40 when he gets married to Rebecca as his wife. Rebecca, being related to Sarah, also suffered from the same thing that she had, which was being barren. But God opened her womb after Isaac prayed. Now, mind you, when Abraham gives the blessing, everything that I have goes to you, by proxy, Isaac becomes a prophet. And because of that, once he prays, Rebecca's womb opens up, the same way that Abraham prayed over Sarah's womb and she was not able to have Isaac. Now, because of the power that was transferred to Isaac when he prayed, it put a lot of pressure on Rebecca, and it caused her to have twins. Now, twins was actually a rare thing back then, and people who had twins didn't usually survive. So the fact that she was having turmoil, it was either she was going to die or she was going to bring two kids. Now, when they prayed and they inquired of the Lord replied to Rebecca and said, "Don't worry. Two nations are in your womb, and two people will be separated from your body. And one people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. I'm sorry, somebody just got admitted. I don't think it went through. Okay. So yes, this is Genesis 25, verse 23. One people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. Now, when that happens, this was being told to Rebekah. So God talked to Rebekah, not Isaac. And that's what a lot of people miss when it comes to this story. So we move forward into Genesis 25 later down in the chapter. The twins are born. The firstborn was hairy and red. They named him Esau. The second was born holding onto the firstborn's ankle, but he was a little skinnier and frail looking. His name was Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when he had the twins. Mind you, this is 20 years after he started praying and getting things after. He married Rebekah, and once he finally got the blessing passed on to him and did what he had to do, he prayed, opened up her womb. He has the twins. And this is in Genesis 25, 23 to 28. Now, let's talk about Esau for a second. Esau was hairy, rough. He's really strong. His name means hairy, rough, maker, doer, and worker. He is the firstborn twin, so that means he is the oldest, and he is the favorite of Isaac, his father. And that's in Genesis 25, verse 28. Symbolically and spiritually, what it means, his name emphasized his natural, rugged, and earthly nature. He was a person that went to go hunt. He was a hunter. He was strong, kind of like Cain. He was made to be out there. He was about the wildlife. Esau's name and his connection to being hairy or red reflects his character as someone driven by physical needs and desires. And we'll see this happen throughout his whole story. Now, Jacob, on the other hand, his name means to follow, be behind, but it can also mean to supplant, overreach, or to overcome. Now, supplant is a strange but funny word to use for him. In this position, supplant in this Hebrew phrase, the way that they use it, it means to literally take his place. Now, usually people are like, yeah, that's what it really means. But in this story, what it actually means is to take his place. Like, I want to be the firstborn, not just take his position, but I want to be him. And that's what the name Jacob means. Now, sometimes you'll hear people say that it means trickster. That's also very true. But he was the second born. He was the favorite of Rebekah. Due to what the Lord told her, she favored Jacob because she knew he would be the one that ends up becoming the promised one. Isaac never believed it, but Rebekah did. So the symbolic meaning is the act of grasping the heel symbolizes his nature as one who will follow or overtake or supplant somebody else. All right. And I know I'm kind of going quick, but that's because we actually have a lot of slides today and there's a lot to get through. All right. So back to the story. Jacob the con man. Around the times the twin would have reached the age of being men, anywhere from 15 to 30 years old. So we'll say 20 just to be on the safe side. They're already working and fulfilling their respective roles. Esau, like we said, was a skilled hunter. He was strong, rugged. He would go out on hunting expeditions. From time to time, he was the one who brought all the food home and nourishment for the household, so he had to go work. Isaac was getting old, so he had to do all the work now. Jacob, however, was a tent dweller. So he was somebody who would cook, clean, help feed the livestock. He was a part-time shepherd. However, being a part-time shepherd and being in the tent also opened up something else for him. It gave him a chance to have a education, to be able to study and actually know a home style lifestyle while his brother was out working, which also gave him the understanding of how to be cunning and a strategic person. When we look at the Hebrew text, it kind of forms it in a sense where it says he was a studying person. He took his time and he always planned everything that he would do. So as we continue, we get to Esau comes back from a long hunting expedition and he was beyond famished. Pretty much just saying he was extremely hungry. This is where we start to see Jacob use his skills against his brother, and that's in Genesis 25, 28 through 34. All right. Now, before we go into the significance of a birthright, when Esau comes back from this hunting expedition, he was gone for approximately 4 to 6 months. And he went somewhere far away to go find something to come back to his family's house with, which was materials, food, money, more clothes, pelts, pretty much. So he had a lot of things that he was taking care of. So when he came to Jacob and he said, "Hey, brother, I am extremely hungry. I could die right now." What ends up happening, Jacob sees an opportunity. So he tells him, "Brother, can you cook me something to eat? Some stew?" And Jacob pretty much tells him no. After they go back and forth, Jacob says, "I'll do it on one condition. You give me your birthright." Esau, not really caring about it, says, "You know what? You can have it. You're not going to change anything. You just want it to say you have it, but it doesn't change anything. I was still born first. So that's always going to be my birthright." But because Esau let go of his birthright, symbolically and spiritually, he pretty much told God, "I don't want it." And this is when we start to see things change for Esau's life. So, what is a birthright? To understand the interaction between Jacob and Esau, we have to understand what it is. It has two parts to it. It comes with a covenantal role. Okay, as we know, Abraham got the covenant. He gave that blessing to Isaac. From Isaac, he brings it on to, or he would bring it on to his kids. So that firstborn son was supposed to be the heir to the family's relationship with God. He was supposed to lead them. So, like I said, from Abraham, Isaac, and then it would have went on to the next. As we know in the story, it goes on to Jacob. But Esau gave up that covenantal role. So it's floating at this point. It doesn't belong to anybody. The other side of the birthright is the material privileges that come with it. So the firstborn would receive a double portion of the family's inheritance compared to other siblings. And we get that reaffirmed for us in Deuteronomy 21, verse 17. And lastly, the most important one is he became the head of the family. There was nobody that could say anything to him. If anybody else in the family wanted to fight for that seat, they would have to leave and start their own family. So he would now become in charge of, upon the father's death, he would be in charge of the money, where they move, what they do, what they eat, so on and so forth. So everything that was right there would have been Esau's. But again, by just saying the words, "Oh, you can have my birthright for some stew," Esau didn't think that anything would change because he was born first. So this is the big issue that we have right here on how special this thing is. So as we go into the next chapter, in chapter 26, we have a situation with Isaac and Abimelech. So just like in Abraham's time, we had a famine in the land. Now, I want you guys to write this as a note. Keep in mind that there's no real term solution for these famines in these days. Abraham had it, and it just keeps coming up and up. It will have a solution in the future, but I want you to just asterisk this for now. God talks to Isaac, and he reaffirms the covenant that he gave to Abraham. So he tells him, don't go to Egypt. Stay where you are in Gerar, which is where Abraham had made one of his first wells. On the other side of that well was the Philistines. And Isaac, fearing for his life, said that his wife was his sister, pretty much doing exactly what Abraham did in a couple chapters earlier. Abimelech takes his sister or wife into his camp, but upon finding out that this was his wife, he rebukes Isaac, but tells him, you know what? You guys are safe in here. I don't want any trouble. You stay on your side, I stay on my side. While Isaac is living there, same way as Abraham, he starts to become wealthy. He starts to amass more people in his family. Things start to get better for him. What it does to the Philistines that are already there, they start to envy him and start to hate him. So, as a way of kind of telling Isaac that he's not welcome, they start to stop up Abraham's wells that he had built so many years before. So Isaac would go back, move, and dig new ones right next to it. So after going back and forth and calling Abimelech to come back to dispute over everything that's going on, he renames one of the wells that his father originally made, Rehoboth, which just means symbolizing God's provision, echoing everything that has happened while he's been there. Abimelech says, listen, I realize you are a blessed man and God has his hand on you. So I want to have a peace treaty with you because once you become too great, we still want a place to live. They make a covenant at this well, at this place, and they call it Beersheba. This is the well of the oath. Here is where our main story takes place in this area. He doesn't usually move from here for the rest of the story. During this time, Esau gets married to 2 Hittite women, which again was against what God had asked them to do, to keep it within their family. But that's because Esau also desired the wild. He didn't really care, he just went with the flow. Before we move on to the next slide, I do want to say something about Abimelech. Now, Jamar, who's not on this Bible study, did ask the question before, and I told him I would answer this in this Bible study. Abimelech is not a person. It's a title, just like king or pharaoh.
Oh, okay, okay.
All right. So the Abimelech here is not the same Abimelech that Abraham dealt with. All right. Okay. So now as we get back to our main story, Jacob the con man strikes again. Isaac was getting old in age. I got a typo there. Sorry. Isaac was getting old in age and his eyesight was becoming bad. So he called Esau to come into his tent so he can give him a blessing. And he says, the son that I love, my time is coming near. Take out your weapons, go hunt, and cook me a delicious meal so I can bless you after I finish eating from your hands. Esau, listening upon this, realizing his time to shine, he says, all right, I'll go do that. And he leaves. Rebecca, his mother, was listening. And in the midst of it, she calls Jacob over and says, hey, Jacob, this is what your father just told your brother. Now, I don't really want your brother to get the blessing. I want it for you. So go get 2 young goats, bring it to me so I can cook your father's favorite meal. And so Jacob says, okay, cool. But what are we going to do about I'm not my brother. I'm not big as him. I'm not hairy like him. How am I going to trick my father with just having the meal? Mother says, listen, I got you. I'm going to put the 2 fur pelts from the goats on your arms so your arms will seem hairy. Go get your brother's clothes, the ones that he had from his last hunting expedition, put them on, and at least you'll smell like him. Jacob did as he was told. Now, before Jacob goes in to actually take the food to his father the way that his father told Esau to do it, Jacob asks, what happens if I get caught? His mom said, you let me take the blame for it. If any curses fall on you, it should be for me and not for you. So in Genesis 27, verse 1 all the way through 17, this is where we get this whole conversation going on. Jacob did just that. Now, Jacob's, which is really Esau's blessing, Jacob took the meal into his father's bedroom. He said, my father. And he said, here I am. Who are you, my son? And that's Isaac asking him. That's Genesis 27, verse 18. He said, I am Esau. And his father says, okay, so how did you hunt so quickly and then prepare the meal for me? Jacob assures him, I am your firstborn son. And God blessed me. That's why I was able to go out there and do this quickly. Isaac told him, come near so I can feel you and hear your voice. As Jacob comes closer to Isaac, he starts to feel his arm and he talks to him. And as Jacob is talking, he says, but you sound like Jacob, but you smell and feel like Esau. So he says, Father, it is me. So in verse 27, we have the transaction. It goes, so he came close and kissed him. And when he smelled the smell of his garments, he blessed them and said, see, the smell of my son is like the smell of the field, which the Lord has blessed. Verse 28, now may God give you of the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and of the abundance of grain and new wine. Verse 29, may people serve you and nations bow down to you. Be masters of your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be to those who curse you, and blessed be those who bless you. After Jacob got the blessing, Esau's blessing, Esau comes back and he starts to prepare his meal, super excited, and he goes into his dad's room and he says, Father, I'm here. His father says, who are you? And he says, Esau, your firstborn son. Immediately, his father starts trembling. And he says, so who was it who just fed me? Who did I just bless? Because Isaac already knew something was off, but he still blessed him. Now, here's where we really get things falling off the hinges. Esau starts to beg for a blessing from his father. And his father told him, I can't undo it. What has gone to Jacob is stuck with Jacob for the rest of his life. Everything that was packed up into that blessing is now Jacob's blessing. Mind you, this is Esau's blessing, but Jacob is now the one carrying this blessing. Okay? So now, Esau noted that he was cheated 2 times. In reality, he was cheated 3 times. And we'll see this number come up as usual, 3. First time that he was cheated was when Jacob held his heel when he was being born. Second time that he was cheated was for the birthright. And that was the only reason why Jacob was actually able to now get this blessing transferred to him. Third time is because he got the blessing that was supposed to be for Esau. Esau asked, what can be done now? And Isaac told him in verse 39, then Isaac his father answered and said to him, behold, away from the fertility of the earth shall be your dwelling, and away from the dews of heaven from above. By your sword you shall live, and your brother you shall serve. But it shall come about when you become restless that you will break his yoke from your neck. This was also a prophetic word describing what would happen between the nations in the future. Esau finishes off the chapter by letting it be known that he hated his brother and that he will take revenge with his life if it's the last thing he does. Rebecca, his mother, hearing this, tells Isaac that he has to flee to her brother Laban's house. Any questions so far?
I was gonna say at first, what bullet point was that at? No, I think you were just talking about last slide when you were talking about how Jacob had went in and was faking and he had said that God had blessed him to work. And I was just like, dang, in a way he's putting God in his lie. Like I know God is like looking at this entire situation like, man. But at the same time, once I thought about it, I was just like, but from the beginning, it seemed that God had already placed him in that position with him being born, holding on to his brother's heels. So I I don't think I think God already knew, what I'm saying, that his role was to lie to gain this well, obviously God already knew that his role was to lie to gain this position. And it makes me wonder if I don't know if it was done to push the story into present day, or if it was done just because God believed that he would have been a better leader for his people, or a better starting point for his or next stage rather for his people.
You bring up a good point, Makai, because going into the Hebrew text a little bit, if we take it a couple chapters back, when he gives up his birthright in the Talmud, it actually says that, and mind you, these are just outside text. If you read any Jewish books or any other text that dwell into the Bible, you'll actually understand that when Esau gave up his birthright, it disappointed the Lord, which is the reason why the door was now open for Jacob.
Mhm. Yeah,
Because
that's what I was thinking. I was like, well, that situation in and of itself should have been enough to make him be like, okay, well, I guess you're just gonna have to reap what you sow, because you gave up a God-given gift for a God-given gift that would be that would ring out for generations and generations for one bowl of food, because you know you were just hungry. So I can see how God would be like, you know what, uh, whatever happens from here to you happens, because you already messed up. So you have to see this through.
exactly. So this is how we kind of get into this whole position. Like I said, a lot of people will note that, oh, it was already made that way. No, a supplanter is not somebody who's actually supposed to be there, which is what Jacob's name means. It was never meant for him. However, they keep trying until, in a sense, you overthrow the person who's there. So his whole identity, his whole thing was to keep fighting until he took that position from his brother. So, but to get back to the story, now Esau is mad. He's already been messing up. He's given off the birthright. He lost his blessing. Yes, Miss Journey, what's up?
Hey, so I don't know if you guys can hear me that well. I missed part of the beginning, but I wanted to ask, maybe it was already explained, what would have been the benefit of the mother essentially putting one brother ahead of the other one? Like, with these both being her children, why is she the person telling her son to do that? Like, does she get benefited out of doing that
In a
and
sense, it
going
would.
against her husband doing that? Like, why was that explained and I just didn't hear it?
So no, it wasn't explained, but I'm glad you asked it. So it's not necessarily about going against the husband or anything like that. It's just she was spoken to already. God told her exactly what was going to happen. So in so many words, he said the younger or the older will serve the younger. So she tried to serve and build up her younger son in a position that will set him up so that way the older will serve him. The only way to do that, since the father loved and adored Esau so much, it was to take his position from him. And
So
since
she was given a word. Okay, I didn't get that part, but it makes sense now. I didn't get
yes, and if you guys don't mind, I'm gonna go back a couple slides for her just to show the verse. This is BJ. You have a question as well?
Yeah, I got a question, but yeah, you can finish first, and then I'll ask my question.
Okay. So in Genesis 25, verse 23, this is when he's sharing the word with the mother. And the Lord tells him, 2 nations are in your wombs, and 2 people will be separated from your body. And 1 people shall be stronger than the other, and the older shall serve the younger. From here, the way that it's written in Hebrew, we start to see that her mentality when it comes to her kids is focused on Jacob, while Isaac sees his son who is strong, and he goes, no, that's my boy right there. He's taking care of this family. He's already being a man of the household. He's getting us the food. He's making sure that we have money. He's making sure we have clothes on our backs. He's taking care of us. Jacob, on the other hand, just cooks. And so, in that sense, Rebecca kind of keeps her peace, but continues to teach, and this is why they say Jacob actually had an education. Esau didn't. Jacob gets all the stuff from inside the house to build the house. But we'll see how God also now shapes Jacob so that way he gets the outside as well. Now, BJ, your question.
I was gonna ask. So you said, how many times did was it Jacob or Esau that got betrayed?
Esau got cheated out of his birthright and blessing 3 times.
Okay.
So, first one being when Jacob came out the womb already holding on to his heel, meaning when the baby is born, you want that baby to come out. You want that baby to have their own time, their own shine. Like, this is the time you were born. I'm not sharing it with you. So he already lost that whole birthright in a sense because Jacob's hand came out with him. So technically they both share in it. So even from the jump, Jacob's hand was already on his blessing because his hand was on his heel. I'm right behind you. Then the birthright where he sold it for the stew, and then boom, stealing the blessing from Isaac. Make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
No problem. And Journey, did I answer your question for you?
You did.
Okay, perfect.
Thank
All right.
you.
No problem. All right, now as we continue, so Rebecca and Isaac now have this conversation. Now, to piggyback off of Journey's question, this is where they talk in the ending of chapter 27, as Rebecca is talking to Isaac and telling her pretty much everything that was transpiring and why she did what she did. Isaac understands. Before, he would have never understood because he would have thought it's only Esau. But once the blessing was transferred to Jacob, he understands. So they start making plans for Jacob at this point. So after Jacob receives his blessing, life after 3 cons, Isaac blesses Jacob again and sends him to his uncle's house, Laban, which is Rebecca's brother, my bad. During this time, Esau is having it rough because the two wives that he had married, which were Hittite women that he was never supposed to be married with in the first place, his mom and dad are starting to get tired of them. They're not doing what they need to be doing. They are upsetting the household. They worship other gods. They're not following what they need to be followed. They're unruly. So to make his mother happy and to make his father happy, because now he's trying to win their affection and trying to get a blessing out of them, he marries a third wife, an Ishmaelite, all because he needed to find somebody that would make his parents happy, and he knew he was never going to be sent away to go marry somebody from his mother's household. So that's why he was chasing the affection from his parents. After Isaac blessed Jacob, he told him, go find a wife, be fruitful, follow exactly what the blessing that God has already given you, and we will resume once it is time for you to come back. Rebecca tells Isaac, hey, listen, I need you to go over there and wait till I call you to come back. I don't know what your brother will do with his anger, and until he quiets down, I don't want any problems between the two of y'all. So Jacob leaves, and when he's about halfway, he gets a little tired. He finds a cave. He's looking for someplace to stay. And at this time, we start to get the way that the chapter is being written. There's like a little space in between. During these next couple phrases and lines, we get it written in a sense like Jacob was weary. He was tired. He was famished. And he barely made it to the cave. And as he's crying and upset and tired about being in the wild, he finds a pillow. What is his pillow? A rock. Takes a stone and puts it under his head just so he can go to sleep because he was that tired. Now, we're going to take a pause right there so I can explain this. Jacob is having a hard time out there in the wild because, again, one, the blessing was never for him. The blessing was supposed to be for Esau, who was made to be in the wild, who was made to be able to weather the storm, to be able to go through a hunting expedition. Jacob's never been outside more than the pastures. So now that he's in the wild with animals and having to find something to sleep and take care of himself, he's not about that life. He is crying. He is scared. He has no muscle on him. He's cold. So sleeping in this cave, not having anything to protect himself, he doesn't know to pull tree branches together or anything to make some wool on the floor to make a pillow for himself. He takes a rock and sleeps on it, and he cries himself to sleep. Now, mind you, we don't get that in our Bible, but if you ever read it in the Hebrew translation, you will see that it's illustrated that he was crying himself to sleep. So once this happens, you start to see that Jacob's being broken. And as we know, before God can use you, he has to break you. While he is there, he has a dream. And in this dream, he sees angels going up and down some staircases. Now, if anybody has ever seen that drawing or painting where you see all these angels going down some like escalators, going up and down escalators, this is where it comes from, what they call Jacob's dream. When in this dream, he sees God at the top of this staircase talking to him, telling him pretty much the blessing. I am the God of your father. I am the God of Abraham. You will be numerous around the world. This is going to be the land that you sleep on. All this land will belong to you, and your children's children would inhabit this. He reaffirms the blessing to him. So when Jacob wakes up, understanding what's going on, in verse 20, he says, and he makes a vow, if God will be with me and will keep me on this journey that I take, I will give my food to and will give me food to eat and garments to wear. I will return to my father's house in safety. then the Lord will be my God. So that's Genesis 28, verse 20 to 21. This is him accepting the covenant from God. It ain't done yet. However, this is the beginning of it. So now, as we know, Jacob is still struggling on this path. He finally makes it to his uncle's city. And here, is where he meets a shepherdess named Rachel. Now, as the story tells you, there is the uncle's servants and other brothers that are out there tending to the field, and he talks to them and asks them for directions and do they know his uncle Laban. And they say, yeah, there goes his daughter right there. She's coming to tend to the sheep because she's a shepherd or a shepherdess. Her name is Rachel. As soon as Jacob sees her, he is smitten by her beauty. And nobody can compare to her. He gets up to her, starts talking to her. Once he lets it be known that I like you, and she says, well, I like you too, he kisses her. Moves pretty quick. But as soon as he kisses her, he just starts to break down and cries out loud. As the verse says, he weeps aloud. This is the culmination of, I just went through the worst experience of my life, and finally, something is paying off. So Rachel brings him back home. He meets his uncle, and his uncle says, yep, you definitely are my family. I can see it in you. Boom, boom, boom. They're talking, and he stays there for about a month. So after the month goes, he makes it very known to his uncle that he would love to have Rachel's hand in marriage. And his uncle says, okay, well, you can't stay here for free. And you can't just have my daughter's hand in marriage for free. So they agree on 7 years. He said, you work for me for 7 years. And then after that, you can have Rachel's hand in marriage. Or as he said, you can have my daughter's hand in marriage. Jacob says, cool, I agree to that. I'll do it. He works for 7 years and doesn't even realize it's 7 years because he was working for his love. 7 years go by. They have a marriage ceremony. We'll rehash about marriage in a little bit. But he has the marriage ceremony. They have the procession and they set up the tent. When he is ready to go to the tent, the flame is burnt out or put out, and he goes into the tent. And as he is sleeping with his wife, when he wakes up in the morning, who does he see? He sees Leah, not Rachel. Upon seeing Leah, he is very upset, beyond that. Goes back to Laban and he says, how could you do this to me? I worked for you for 7 years for Rachel's hand in marriage, and you gave me your firstborn daughter. And he goes, man, let me tell you, you can't come in here and switch up the culture. You can't switch up the way we do things. In our country, we follow things by the rule. You come here as the firstborn son. Now remember, this is again the blessing that he holds. Just because it's a blessing doesn't mean everything that comes with it is going to be peaches and cream. Because he took the blessing of a firstborn and he has the anointing of a firstborn, he gets the firstborn daughter as well. So now Laban tells him, if you want Rachel, who is the secondborn, it would either have to be your brother or somebody else to get Rachel, or you can work for me for 7 more years, and then you can have her hand in marriage. And he says, you know what? I'll work 7 more years. And he did that. He said he didn't even feel like it was a day that went by. So that happens, and he finally gets Rachel's hand in marriage. And he finally marries the woman of his dreams. Now, for the 3 cons that he did, here goes the first time that Jacob is being messed with. All of those things have a consequence that come with it. 3 cons, 3 times he's going to be conned as well. Any questions before we move on?
I just think it's interesting how he didn't know the terms and conditions. He just moved off of pure just, you know what, this is what I want to do, this is what blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I like your daughter. All right, cool. And then I'm pretty sure his uncle knew. It's just like or rather his uncle probably assumed that he knew, but yeah. Wait, no, does his uncle even know about the situation? Or
No,
okay,
because
yeah, so
again,
that makes sense. That makes sense,
in
yeah.
that culture, even if you asked for the 3rd or 4th, 5th daughter, it wouldn't matter. If you are the firstborn, or if you're the first person to get to my house and my first daughter is still available, that's who you're going to get. If you want the other ones, you're going to have to do and pay that birth price, or not birth price, that marriage price for the next daughter. Now, if Leah, who was the firstborn, would have been deemed unworthy, then yeah, he could have had Rachel. But as we know, she did everything she was supposed to do, and she was known as a woman. And that's the reason why Jacob walked into Esau's blessing, because that should have been Esau's wife. Had Esau followed what he was supposed to do, Jacob would have went after, and he would have had Rachel, because his heart always belonged to Rachel. And this is where we see God's hand. Yeah, this would have been for you had you did what you were supposed to do. But because you went and tried to be somebody that you weren't, this is what you got to deal with.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say earlier, that this story is a perfect example as to why you shouldn't envy and want to
Mm-hmm.
have somebody else's life as your own, because everybody's built for a specific path, and you may see it with your eyes that it looks like something you could do as well, but you they may have one small thing that just sets them apart from you. And well, for Jacob, that was Esau's manliness, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
that made his path um much more difficult. But yeah, I think this their relationship and Jacob's relationship with God, it shows, what I'm saying, he'll give you what you, or he'll guide you on the path that you choose to walk. But you know not every path is for you. He'll still be there for you, but he'll make it clear which one is for you. But
There you
sometimes we
go.
choose to go on paths that we know aren't for us anyway, and he still has to be there and support in
You said
whichever
it.
way.
You said it. Now, what's funny about this is the Bible gets very graphic here, and it tells us Rachel was very beautiful. However, Leah was very plain looking, very weak eyed. When they say weak eyed, it means like a lazy eye. So, not only even that, we'll have in the story where if you read the chapters, you'll see that Rachel actually makes fun of her sister for having a lazy eye. Probably the most childish thing that you can ever happen. But they do make fun of each other for it because, again, she was so plain looking while Rachel was considered the most beautiful one out there. Yes.
Okay, so basically to tag along to what was just said, like a little comment. I know sometimes in life, like we just compared to, why it can be dangerous to envy, the next person because you don't necessarily know what their steps are. But I think it's also cool to recognize that God does give us free will. And so
Mm-hmm.
we are able to make those choices. So it's just like, he doesn't really have the room to say, God, why me? Because he knew what he did, which is what will happen in our lives too. When, we're supposed to do something, but say do something else. Yes, it will be permitted. Like, like it will go through, but will it happen exactly how you thought? Probably not. So I think that this is also like a cool representation of like things will still be allowed to happen. It's just gotta play out the way it has to play out because of decisions or choices made that may be contrary to what was initially said by God. So I was kind of like a tag on of what was said first, but I agree. I think that's pretty cool.
Right. And that's exactly what it is he's starting to now realize that me trying to be somebody else that I wasn't supposed to be is costing me. And even though now he's starting to regret it, you start to see the way that he starts to treat his life. He's being broken down because, again, Jacob was the houseboy. He was the 10th dweller. Now God has to rebuild him. So he's breaking him down piece by piece, day by day. At this point, it's been 14 years. He's breaking him down to build him back up into the person that will rightfully be the heir of this family. Mind you,
He's building him into Esau, pretty much.
exactly.
Yeah.
And how did he do that? 14 years he worked in the fields. Remember when we start off the story, they're already about the time that they will be fulfilling their roles, anywhere from 15 to the ages of 30. So for 14 more years for you to train and be working in the fields, you've pretty much done an adequate amount of training to catch up with your brother at this point. You're no longer a skinny, frail guy. So, yes, BJ.
No, I don't have a question. It's just a little comment though.
What's up?
It just hearing that makes me think of like God's timing. Like, you know how long 14 years is? You know how long really like a year is, but it goes by quick. That I'm saying like 14 years is so long, but it goes back to I think Makai said it earlier, when it's God's timing, it's God's timing. Like you can't rush no man, you can't rush God. Like say God, like I know the waiting season sucks, but like the fact that he waited his time for 14 years and then finally he got, what he was looking for, it just shows like God's timing is always the best timing.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. What's up, Makai?
Yeah, I just want to tag on that too. God is a crock pot God. He's not not a microwave God. You know, the longer you leave stuff in a crock pot, the better it tastes. So
Mm-hmm.
he likes to cook things long, and you might have to wait a couple hours for that stuff to come out of that crock pot, but it's gonna be great. And you might wait 30 seconds to heat up that stuff in the microwave. And, it'll be hot, but some of that flavor might be gone.
That's real. And also too, just it's man, y'all, we really picking up here. But along with thorough, or like a slow cooking, very thorough, and also acknowledging that God is a man of his word. Like if he said he's gonna do something, I'm gonna do it. Like, and it's just gonna have to be that way, whether you like it or not. This is what has to happen because this is what I said. Whether it was
Yep.
generations before or now, if I told you something that happened and it's gonna trickle down in generations, did you necessarily quote unquote deserve it? But you're gonna have to pay for what your forefathers did. And so, but there's a way out. So it's not like, oh, you're just doomed. Is it going to take 14 plus years? Maybe, but yeah, it's doable. It's possible. It's difficult. Yeah. But I think seeing this story and as we continue to see it, play out, like it makes sense a little bit more.
Good. I'm glad you guys are really catching on to these themes. Like I said, breaking down these stories is essential if you want to understand the rest of the Bible, which is why we started at the beginning, and we're going to keep making our way through. So the marriage tent. We've talked about marriage before. So just to briefly go back over it, the marriage process would be you would inquire, you would become a man yourself. Once you become a man, your parents would go find you a mate. So somebody in your city, somebody in your town, or in this case, they sent him back to the mother's household. You'd be put in a position where you would have the opportunity to meet the family or come to face with the parent, but you would not meet the daughter yet. And you pretty much, it will be stated already for you that, hey, I've become a man, you have a daughter that's become a woman. I'm at that young, tender age where I don't want lust to overcome me, so I need a wife. I've done everything that would make me necessary to qualify me as a man. So whatever the price is, I'll pay it so that way I can have my wife. Then it'll be followed by a week-long ceremony where the families would get together, celebrate, eat, but the wife would never be seen. She would stay home while the husband would get to meet the rest of the family. When the day for the marriage happens, the wife would get a ceremonial cleanse, be washed by all the women in her family and her mother. She's still alive. They would get her dressed in nice linens with some perfume and myrrh, and they'll put her in what they call the marriage tent. This tent was a special tent. It didn't have any light to come in. And so she's essentially in the darkness on the floor with the bed made up. There was no sandals in there. There was no shoes in there. It was just her, and the man was to come in his undergarments, no shirt on. Only when the lamp that's outside of the tent, when the woman was ready, she was to take the lamp, blow out the flame. When she puts the lamp back out, that's the signal to the family and the man, hey, it's time to go. And there would be like a little trail or path leading to this tent. And they would know, hey, which is why when we have marriages today, we have that little walk off or send off when we let them go to the limousine or whatever. This is where that comes from. So this is essentially the family sending him off to the tent. When he gets to the tent, this is where the holy matrimony happens, where, of course, they sleep together. When he wakes up, he is no longer the man he was when he walked into that tent. When he walks out that tent or opens up that tent to see the face of his wife, he is now a married man in the eyes of God. And now when that tent is open in the eyes of man, this is my wife. So when that happened with him and he opened up the tent, he seen Leah. Leah knew what was going on. She kept her mouth shut, but he didn't, which is why he felt like he was tricked out of getting married to the person he wanted. Now, it doesn't feel so sweet to get tricked out of something when you felt like it originally belonged to you, or you worked for it, or it was always supposed to be yours. So, as we continue on with the story, we get to a thing where he starts to have his children. Now, it was kind of like he was going back and forth because there's two other women in this. We have Rachel's servant and we have Leah's servant. And if you guys remember from the previous Bible studies, we talked about the servants usually were also wedded to the husband whenever the woman got married. So whenever the woman would get married, her servant, whether it was her younger sister, a close cousin, a close friend, they would also get married along with them, because this is the person who's going to help them while they're going through the birthing process, the pregnancy, or delivering, and before they get their strength back. Their servant would also be their midwife. They'll cook for them, take over the duties at the house, but at the same time, because they're going into servitude, they also get the right to have children with the father, so that way that their lineage can continue as well. So it was a win for both sides. So we get Leah, who gets Reuben, the firstborn, and his name means the Lord has seen my misery. Reason being is because she was upset that Jacob never had eyes for her. He only wanted to be with Rachel. He didn't spend no time with nobody else but Rachel, and she couldn't stand it. But as soon as she realized she was pregnant and had his first child, she goes, boom, the Lord has seen my misery. Probably he'll look at me now. Then she had Simeon. The Lord heard that I'm not loved, still not being pursued by him. So then she has Levi. Now my husband will become attached to me. Still nothing. Then she has the fourth one, Judah. This time I'll praise the Lord. Her tone is starting to change a little. because she's starting to get to a point where she's like, all right, bet. He may not be paying attention to me, but these kids he's going to have to take care of. And until somebody else has any kids, I'm the only one that gave him any kids. I'm his first wife. I had his first child. I'm more important. Then Rachel's servant comes into the picture. She has Dan, which means God has vindicated me. And she has Naphtali, which is I have wrestled with my sister and won. Now, Bilhah is either a half sister or a cousin to Leah and Rachel, which is why she calls them her sisters. So she ends up having 2 kids for Jacob. Now we have Zilpah, which is Leah's servant. She has Gad, which means what good fortune, and Asher, how happy I am. Jacob has 3 more kids with Leah. Issachar, which is God has rewarded me, and Zebulon, which is now my husband will treat me with honor, because at this point, no matter how many tries he had with Rachel, she still bore him no children. And lastly, with Leah, he had a daughter named Dinah. And remember, whenever they mention a girl into the story, it's usually meaning that she has an important play in the role of their history. Because a lot of them do have daughters, they just don't mention them. Now, he finally has children with Rachel. And Joseph and Benjamin. Benjamin's born a lot later. And during Benjamin's death, or Benjamin's birth, Rachel actually dies. And that's due to complications. Again, it was already hard for her to have babies, following the trend that her grandmother was barren to her mother or her auntie being barren as well. And now she was also dealing with the same pregnancy woes in her family. So Benjamin's name was to be called Ben-Ami or Ben-Omi, which was supposed to be son of my sorrow. But Jacob ends up renaming him to Benjamin, son of my right hand. Now, these are all of Jacob's kids. You got all 12 that eventually their descendants become the 12 tribes of Israel, and where our main story stems from. However, Dinah also is part of that, so 13 kids altogether. All right, so Leah has 6 sons, 1 daughter. Rachel has 2 sons. Bilhah has 2 sons, and Zilpah has 2 sons as well. Now, also, if you're taking notes, I want you to highlight or circle Judah's name and Reuben's name. My bad. Matter of fact, highlight Reuben, highlight Judah, star Levi, and put an asterisk next to Simeon. Those 4 right there become so important for us outside of Joseph and Benjamin. Those 4 shape pretty much what ends up happening for the rest of the Israelites to come. And all because of their actions. So, as we go back to the main story and we see Jacob, when Jacob had Joseph, he asked his uncle to let him go home. After Joseph's birth, Jacob asked for permission. Laban said, "Why do you want to leave?" He goes, "Well, I want to go have a place for me and my family. It's time for me to leave here. We've outgrown this place." Laban acknowledges that Jacob's presence has brought him great prosperity. So Laban asks Jacob to name his wages so he can buy him to stay. Jacob says, "You know what? I'll work for you some more, but only under one condition. And if I do this, after that, you got to let me go. So in this one, he goes, and this is a issue with the way that they breed. And this is where that knowledge that Jacob had proved to help him in the situation where the uncle was trying to trick him and con him out of leaving. So usually when we read the Bible, we always look for a blemish, lamb that has no blemishes on it. But here, Laban is saying, hey, look, I want to get all the plain white lambs. Give me all of those. You take all the speckled and spotted or dark colored sheeps. And those would be the wages. And so with that being the terms, Jacob says, okay, boom, I will go ahead and breed them. When we have these, I'll take what's left and you take what you got. I'll breed you those and I'll keep this. And depending on which translation you read, it's either 1 year or 2 years. As Jacob is breeding these, he ends up getting more speckled and spotted ones that have blemishes on them. And Laban didn't get enough. But because it's so rare to have speckled colored ones and dark colored sheep and spotted ones, Jacob made a killing. And so as Laban tried to play him again, which is the second con that happens to him, Laban says, you know what? I'm literally trying to mess you up here and have you stay with me because it will take you way too long to match the amount of speckled ones that you have to the amount of clean ones that I have. And yet Jacob was able to do it and then still double on top of it. So, and this is where we get Jacob thrives even in this because of God's blessing on him. And this is Genesis 30, verses 25 to 43. Now, it's time. He's fulfilled his role. He's been tricked by the uncle twice already. And so he's like, it's time for me to go home. So he takes, in the middle of the night, knowing that the uncle was not going to let him go, he's going to come up with another idea to keep him there. He tells all his families, hey, look, pack up all your stuff, get ready to go, we're leaving. He gets all of his slaves, his servants, all of his livestock, and they leave in the middle of the night. In the process, Rachel steals her father's household god, teraphim. And that's without Jacob's knowledge. So after 7 days, Laban finally catches up with all of his servants. They catch up to Jacob. He accuses Jacob of deceit and demands all of his gods back. He says, if not, everybody has to come back to the household because by law, you just stole from me. So now you owe me and you got to go back to work for me. So as Laban is accusing Jacob, Jacob was just like, no, I didn't do anything. He's denying all the accusations, but Rachel is sitting on top of the god that she took from the house. She's saying because she just had her kid and she's still sore, she can't get up. So once he figures out that Rachel is lying to him, this is strike number 3. He's been tricked by Laban twice. And now the person that he's been working for, Rachel, tricked him as well and lied to his face and literally caused him to almost be in a whole issue. So now he's been conned 3 times for the 3 times he conned his own brother. The tips have been balanced. Laban and Jacob agree at this point, let us go out in peace. I don't want no trouble with you. You're still my nephew. You have my daughter. I would love for them to still stay here with me, but I understand I'm not going to get in your way. I'm going to let you go. So at this point, as we see, all of the tips have been balanced. The scales have been balanced, as I said. Laban now, instead of trying to trick Jacob, he blesses him. He blesses his families. He blesses his grandchildren. And Jacob and his family leave. Now, on his way, He's going to meet his brother, and he knows that they have to meet each other, but it's already been 20 plus years. He left when he was 40. He is 60 now. So he sends a messenger to Esau, who now has taken control of the whole territory and named the country Edom, because that's his new name. Esau's name has been changed to Edom. Hoping to reconcile with his brother after taking his birthright and his blessing, the messenger returns reporting that Esau is coming to him with 400 men, causing Jacob to get scared. Now, usually this is what most people know about the story. Jacob was scary. You done been trained. You know how to be a rich man. You know how to be wealthy. You know how to be the man of the household. You're a father now. You have everything that your brother had before. You're just as capable of us as him now. But yet, that fear, because still at the end of the day, his name is Jacob and Esau's name is Esau. Jacob was still scared because he knew he was trying to take from Esau. So as soon as he heard Esau had 400 men, he has less than 30 himself. So he said, you know what? I'm scared. So what he does, he stops his family. He splits them into two main groups. And in those two main groups, he splits into two more. The groups, he got Leah's side and Rachel's side. Then he has the servants, the two servants on the tops of the mountains to walk. On the bottom of the valley, he has Leah in front and then Rachel in the back. So how they do it is they have the kids go first, then the women go after them. Then he has Leah's kids go first, then Leah after that. Then he has Joseph go after, and then Rachel behind, and he stays behind a little bit and then follows. So he strategically puts it up just in case Esau attacks on the top. Since they're in the middle of the valley, they would attack the top two families first. So the servants' kids would be the first ones to go. If they started to come down the valley, they would hit Leah and the kids first before they get to Rachel. But if they happen to kill Leah's kids and Rachel and kill Leah and then get to Rachel and kill her, he can be safe in the back and he will be the last line of defense. It was very cowardly, but he did that to preserve himself. Now, if you notice something, he's following the trend. Once they get the blessing, they do this trend where they hide. Abraham did it and said, she's my sister. Isaac did it and said, she's my sister. Here goes Jacob. And instead of saying it's my sister, he hides behind her. He's supposed to be the man to lead. And instead, because he is not Esau, he hides behind everybody because he was Jacob. He was always in the tent, hidden. As he's having this problem and the two families on the mountainsides have already gone, he is wrestling in the middle of the night with a mysterious man, later revealed to be as God. But the man touches Jacob's hip, dislocating it. But Jacob refuses to let go without a blessing. Now, reason why that verse is pretty much stated that way, back then, if you fought somebody in the streets, whoever was losing, they lose everything. So you have to bless the other person. But here, Jacob is not losing. He said, I'm not giving this up. I've lost every other fight in my life. I'm weak. I'm scared. I'm not cut out for this. But this time, I'm not letting go. I'm going to fight you until that sun comes up. And he's like, you're going to have to give me, I'm not losing. You're going to have to give me your blessings. And when the sun starts to come up, the man stops and he blesses Jacob and he renames him Israel. He said, because you have struggled with God. And right there, Jacob realizes that was the hand of God that touched his hip, which is why it never healed. Now, once that happens, this is signifying that his perseverance has started to now transform him. All the stuff that he's been struggling with, he's starting to realize I've been scared for no reason. I've made it this far because God has protected me. I made a promise here. Mind you, he's at the same place that he had that dream before when he was going to his uncle's house. I made a vow here that you would always protect me and I would still call you my God. So I'm going to name this place Peniel, the face of God, saying he saw God's face to face and he survived. So now Jacob's new name is Israel, and this marks a pivotal moment of spiritual growth and his identity with the covenant. But we'll come back to this. After his brother comes to him and he finally gets up there, he's walking with a cane. He walks up, his brother sees him and pretty much goes like, what's going on? Like, you walking with a limp, you good? He's just like, yeah, we're good. His brother hugs him and cries and he goes, I've missed you. I'm sorry. His brother is apologizing to him. His brother is telling him, I have nothing but love for you. I don't even know why we were arguing back then. It's been way too long since I've seen you. So let's go back home. Let's go see mother and father. Let's go ahead and get this family going back. You're the leader of this family. You need to come back home. Esau is a completely different man. After having kids and learning through his life on his side, he has finally now matured to a man that can be accepting of his brother. And the prophecy that his mother was given is actually starting to come to fruition. But however, Jacob disobeyed. When God told him to go back with his brother, he told his brother, don't worry, I'm going to follow you. Give my family a couple days since they just had their kids and my kids are still pretty young. Now, mind you, yes.
So he didn't learn nothing from his battle. Like, God literally got his hip busted up because he didn't listen the first time when God clearly showed him that he was protected. And it reminds me of myself, really. But he didn't learn anything. Like, he was still scared afterwards. Like, he still had his tendencies even after his whole, because even us as people, we have those nights when we just get that massive amount of motivation. But his was different. He fought for his job, like, and then the next day comes and then he's just like, he's still moving in a cowardly way. And I feel like, I don't know, it feels like such a big thing, and it has to be, because even in the Bible it says the first people that don't make it into heaven are cowards. So it's like it doesn't make any sense how he had these opportunities and then to grow, and then he squanders it after. Like, it almost makes me feel like Esau, which it makes sense, but Esau grew more through his loss than Jacob did from his gain, because it don't really feel like Jacob lost anything. Esau lost his entire life and Jacob gained an entire future, but he had to work for it. But that I mean, yes, 14 years, but I can't imagine that his 14 years had as much experience in it as Esau's. So I can see how Esau's development. What am I trying to say? I don't understand how. I can see how Jacob didn't see Esau's development and fully trust it, because Jacob didn't develop enough to be able to understand that his brother could change and not want to kill him. Because in the back of his mind, he's still fearing man.
Exactly.
He's fearing his brother more than he's fearing God, and he didn't grow enough to understand. Granted, he's 6. This is what I'm saying. Like, Age ain't got nothing to do with wisdom. Like
It
he's
doesn't.
60 years old and he still didn't trust God's protection, and still didn't
Christopher,
trust his brother changing as well.
and this is the just stay with me. I'm gonna show you something funny. Because his heart is very callous at the moment. Jacob's identity just changed. He was just renamed Israel, but however, he hasn't started operating as Israel yet. But you're gonna see what actually forces him to actually turn his life around. Brock, you had a question?
No, I was just going to piggyback off of the comments that you all were making. I think it's ironic that Jacob was willing to fight with God, but still feared man. And
Mm-hmm.
it just says a lot about how sometimes we as humans, we live in the reality of what's in front of our eyes rather than what God is telling us and has told us to do.
BJ, what's up?
To piggyback off what y'all said, I know, but
Love it. I love it.
it's when Makai said, the first people to go to be denied out of heaven are cowards. I say that because we talked about that in church, and in church we're talking about the book of Revelations and how the book of Revelations is there to prepare us and not to scare us. So I just find it funny that he said that in this moment, and that the question that our pastor said this week is, when the time comes, right, and the people talk about the Antichrist and all that kind of stuff, would you deny God? Would you really sit there and say, I'm going with the world or I'm walking with Christ? So sorry to kind of get off topic, but I just found it funny.
No, it's never off topic. Again, it's
Um,
necessary and it's needed. But pretty much to let you know what's going on here. Again, he fought with God, but still afraid of man. He's even sent gifts to Esau to lessen the load, so try to make him happy. And his brother said, I didn't care about that. I cared about you. I love you. My brother, my twin. They were identical twins at that. So, with that being said, God told him to go back. God gave a order to the newly named Israel to go back home. Jacob disobeyed. Now I want you to understand the difference. Isaac was ordered to go home. Jacob disobeyed. Two identities in one. And this is where, if you ever notice, you'll hear them say the God of Jacob, and in the same sense, they'll say the God of Israel. A lot of people think they're talking about the kids or the nation of Israel, but it's not the same. When they say the God of the nation of Israel or the God of the children of Israel, that's when they're talking about the people. But whenever they say the God of Israel, they do not mean the place. They just mean the person. When they say the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, they say it in that three. But then sometimes if they just say the one, they'll just say the God of Israel. In church, we don't do a good job of teaching the difference between the children versus the man. The person Israel was blessed with that blessing, which is why their descendants become the Israelites. So as we continue with the story, you're going to start seeing the verses continue to change, because whenever Jacob is still operating in the mindset of Jacob, they're going to call him Jacob. And whenever he's operating in the mindset of the Spirit, they're going to call him Israel. So make that note in your notepads. When it's Israel, you'll see what Israel is doing. But when it's Jacob, you'll see what Jacob is doing. Yes.
so it's kind of like well, what I'm thinking is it's just like with Jesus and Emmanuel, the whole what we were talking about the other day with the whole Yu-Gi-Oh thing and the flipping. Like it makes me think of, someone told me a while back, they were like, or maybe it was church, and we were talking about how the name that you have on earth isn't even God's name for you, and I'd assume that that name is the name of your spirit and not the name that you're given when you enter into your suit that you get once you're
We'll,
born
we'll,
to
we'll
this
get there.
world. And
Oh yeah, you touching on something big, but we'll
yeah,
get
yeah.
there.
No,
Just be
I'll let
patient.
you cook. I'll let you cook.
But yes, so essentially that's the same thing. So when seeing Jacob's life, the reason why Israel becomes such an important factor for the history is because this is the first time we actually see exactly how God is going to manifest Jesus in the future. This is when we see a duality in a man. We have Jacob the man and we have Israel the man. Just like we had Emmanuel or Joshua the man, and we had Jesus Christ the man. Whereas Joshua or Emmanuel, however you want to call him, had his own mindset and didn't want to be crucified on the cross. And in the Garden of Gethsemane, he was praying to God, let this cup pass from me. He was crying, not just crying like, oh my gosh, no. He was weeping and wanted to die right there. I don't want to be crucified. I don't want to die. None of us want to. And he literally prayed and cried for hours on end till he was almost dehydrated. God, I don't want to die. But then Jesus says, I'm willing to take it. Same way here, Jacob still hasn't gotten it. But Israel. But this is the reason why it says Jacob disobeyed. And he went to a city called Shechem. Shechem is one of the cities that plays a pivotal role for Jacob's life. And it also becomes a city within the land of Canaan. Now, what's also, eventually I'll make a map of everything for you guys, but everywhere that they travel, besides Egypt in these stories, is part of the promised land. Everywhere that Abraham had made a well at to pretty much put the border around the promised land is exactly where they have been this whole entire time. So now that Jacob is in Shechem, he is there, he buys land from the people. So, meaning he doesn't just visit Shechem, he actually goes to live in Shechem. And instead of going back home to Isaac and the rest of his family, he sets up camp in the city and just lives there. Now, I did give the disclaimer to everybody else before we started. I know Tania and Journey came on after. The next portion that we're going to talk about actually does involve rape. So if that is a problem, you guys are free to go. Just wanted to put out a disclaimer. So if you guys are okay, we'll continue. If not, you guys are good.
Oh no, we got to get into it.
Okay,
I'm here for it
bet.
all.
Okay.
I'm fine.
Okay. Good. All right.
So while he's in Shechem, he purchases land from these people, which God never told him to do. He starts to live and starts to get his stuff together. His daughter, trying to make friends, goes into the city and visits the women of the land. So she starts dancing with them, starts, living life with them. One of the princes from the region walked into the city and went to this place where all the women is, and he's seen Dinah. As he is looking at Dinah, he likes her so much, he actually takes her and he rapes her. After he finishes raping her, he falls in love with her. But because now he's already defiled her, she can no longer be married to anybody else but him. So to hide his actions, he asks his father to arrange a marriage with Jacob so that way he can marry Dinah. So he goes to Jacob's house and asks for Dinah's hand in marriage. Jacob's sons, finally talking to their sister and realizing what happened after Shechem and his father leave, after seeing Shechem and his father leave, they get mad and tell Jacob, what are you doing? Our sister was just raped by this man, and you're actually entertaining the idea of marrying her off to him? Now here goes the conflict. Jacob has never been in this problem before. Now he has to bring in the culture, and he also has to bring in the fatherhood of it. How do I protect my daughter here? How do I still do everything right in the culture so that way I can still keep my status as a man in the region and not have any problems with anybody else around? So the boys, being pissed at their father, said, "You know what? We're not going to do this with you. We're going to take matters to our own hand." Jacob says, "No, don't do that. We're going to have a dinner with them and we're going to talk." They said, "Don't mention anything about it, the raping happening. We're just going to do what we got to do." When they have this meeting, Jacob's sons say, "Hey, look, you can marry our sister on one condition." And mind you, Jacob is still being a coward here because he's not speaking up at all. He said, "You can marry our sister, but because we are Hebrew, you have to be circumcised." So Hamor and Shechem agree. Shechem convinces all the men in the city to comply by saying, "Listen, they're rich. We have the resources. They'll become our people. Their family will make our family rich. The city will become rich, and this will become their land and our land together. We'll become one family." So when this happens, all the men in the city, every single one of them, old and young, agree to get circumcised. Now, for the guys, we understand this is a painful process. But for an older man, like usually babies get circumcised when they get born. But if it's a man, if he's getting circumcised, usually would take him about 3 days to a week before he starts healing back up. So he'll be in a lot of pain and he won't be able to move. So on the third day after the circumcision, while the men in Shechem are in pain, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, they attack the city and they kill all the men, including Shechem and his father Hamor. Not only that, they rescue Dinah, who was also staying at their house because she was going to be wedded to them. Once they got back with Dinah, Jacob's other sons, with the exclusion of Joseph, all went and plundered the city, taking their women, their other children, and made them slaves, took their livestock, literally ransacked the city, and took it off for himself. Jacob, since now there's no more men in the city, it's just him. Jacob rebukes Simeon and Levi for their actions, fearing retaliation from the surrounding Canaanites and the Perizzites. Simeon and Levi defend their actions, arguing to their father that, hey, should we let our daughter be treated like a prostitute out there? And that's how the chapter finishes. But the reason why the chapter finishes that way is because it shows you that there is a disagreement with the sons to the father. They're now questioning Jacob and his leadership. They're like, if we never came here, we should have went home. If we never followed what you said in the first place, we would have never came to this city. This would have never happened to our sister, and we would have been fine. Yes.
There's a lot to unpack here, but that last part is like, now that we're like, you can read God's word and think you understand, but they're just little nuggets. And now I'm starting to see the reflections and everything, like how the chapter ends with them having a disagreement. It's a mirror to how the people of Israel have a problem with their Father in heaven. In their leaving through out of Egypt, and questioning him on, you know what I'm saying, or questioning Moses more so, but still questioning God in that manner. The same way that they're questioning the judgment and all that. It's father to father. It's the same situation. And then on top of that, damn, what was I gonna say? No way I was about to lead into that.
If you remember, just let me know.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you know. I'm gonna let you.
It's all good. While all this is happening, right? Again, had Jacob not taken control of the ship and let Israel lead, his family would have been spared. His family would have been safe. None of this would have ever happened. But because Jacob decided to do his own thing and disobey, this is the consequences that he walked into. And this serves, yes.
My bad. I wanted to give you a good stopping point, but it's like how we can be. Well, I won't say we. I won't put everybody in it because I don't question God's judgment no more. But it's like how the world rather always hits God with the well, how could he do this and how could he do that and oh what, like questioning the Father. It's a reflection of current day too on how people of the world uh accuse God for his judgment when his ways are and his understanding is above ours. But granted, Jacob was, I can't compare Jacob to God in this instance because Jacob's operating in Jacob and not Israel. So it, the situation, like you said, the situation would have been avoided if he had taken the reins. The situation.
And this is just to go to show you, there's a lot of things that even when we are operating where God wants us to, and we're walking in our, our blessing and our mission and our calling, when we mess up, when we sin, there's always a consequence that comes with it. God told you to go forward and you decide to go left. There's something that's going to happen because now you made your path longer because now you got to get back on path. This is what forces Jacob to now realize I cannot be fighting this fight as Jacob anymore. I am Israel. And as he still starts to fight with this, we're going to see that God is chiseling off Jacob and breaking down Jacob so that way Jacob does not get in Israel's way. So as Simeon and Levi are defending their sister's honor, Reuben is in the back, his firstborn son. Because if Jacob is doing all this lawlessness and not following, why do I need to follow? So the lust of his father now gets spread to him. Reuben takes one of Jacob's servants, one of the four ladies, the mothers, and he sleeps with her. And depending on which translation you read, he rapes Jacob's other wife. And that is a secret until the future. Now, the wife ends up telling Jacob, but Jacob holds it to himself. And this is what's now breaking his spirit even more. He's like, bruh, all the stuff that is happening is because I let this happen. I opened up the door. Now look at the way my family is becoming. Two of my kids are murderers, mass murderers at that. The other ones are thieves, and they've plundered and enslaved the rest of this population of the city. So now I have people with me that didn't want to be with me, but because they have no husbands or no sons anymore, they're stuck with us. My city is getting bigger, not because I wanted to, but I'm carrying luggage with me because of my sin. And instead of letting go of it because I just started a new path and a new journey, I'm still picking up baggage from other places that I had no business going. And now I'm trying to get back, and it's getting harder and harder. I'm losing the respect of my kids. My daughter was defiled. Things are happening. My own son raped my wife. And all of this is bothering Jacob to the point where Jacob goes, all right, bet, it's time to go. I should have followed in the first place. So as he is on his way back, he makes it back to the exact cave that he was at before he went to go meet Rachel. God meets Jacob again and says, go to Bethel, build an altar. And he appeared to him there. And he says, listen, tell your family, get rid of all the foreign gods, purify themselves, pray, change your clothes. The people that you are now, you guys are now the tribes of Israel. You are the children of Israel. you are no longer the person who you used to be. God reaffirms Jacob's new name. He said, now you'll be able to operate in Israel, because Jacob is being chiseled away, and I've broken down Jacob enough to where Jacob will not interfere with Israel's blessing. Because remember, the blessing was for Esau. But since it went to Jacob, Jacob was not the man who was made for that blessing. So for God to justify that blessing, he had to reshape and rebuild Jacob into another person. That person is Israel. So now, in the process, it goes into a story where Rachel dies giving birth to Benjamin. All right. And Jacob buries her near Ephrath, which is Bethlehem, and he sets up a pillar on top of her grave. Now, I want to go into this verse because it's actually very significant to show exactly what ends up happening with Jacob moving forward. So this is chapter 35, verse, let's see, hold on. Give me 1 second. It is in verse, I think, 21. Okay, depending on which translation you have, verse 20 to 21. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephraim, that is Bethlehem. Jacob set up a stone monument over Rachel's grave, and it can be seen there to this day. Verse 21. Then Israel traveled on. Verse 22 is when his son did what he did with Bilhah. But at this point, in verse 21, this is the part where Jacob also feels the regret. This chapter, we have 3 deaths, not 2. It says it's the death of Isaac and Rachel. That's the title, but in reality, it's 3 deaths. Rachel dies, Isaac dies, then Jacob dies. Because in verse 21, after Jacob buries Rachel, it says Israel carried on. Israel traveled on, signifying that once Rachel died, Jacob had no other need to still be alive, even though he's still alive and well. But the significance of him was for Rachel. But Israel had a wife. His wife was Leah, by law, by tradition, and by history. So even though Rachel died, the person who cared about Rachel was Jacob. So right there, when Rachel was buried, Jacob was buried. Not only did it mark the cutting of Jacob now no longer having power over Israel, Israel was now able to operate and be the leader and the heir and the person who will now start the blessing that God had promised to Abraham as they go forward to go back home. We get another retelling of who was everybody's kids, and Jacob returned to his father, Isaac, and they buried him in the same tomb with Abraham. Isaac lived to be 180 years, and it was Esau and Jacob who buried him. Now, after that, we'll pick up on the next portions of what happens after, because this is the ending of the story of Jacob and Esau. After this, we get to the story of Joseph, but before we get to Joseph, we have the story of Israel and Edom. Because now, Israel is who takes center stage. So, before we finish, any questions? What's up?
It's not a question, more of a statement, but I love how spiritual these events are, seeing the difference, and it just makes me think of myself because I remember when before I come to Christ, what was that, 3 years ago, I think. I was still myself, I was my old self, of course. But it's interesting because I ended up like telling people my name, and I started telling people my name was Kai instead of Makai because I was bouncing around Georgia and I didn't want people to remember me too much because I wasn't going to be places for too long. But through that process, I look back and I see that was the beginning of me like being broken down into being who I was stating myself to be next. And it was like, yeah, okay, if you want to be a new person, and what I'm saying, if you want to be a new person, we got to kill this old self. So I stayed on that, but then I went through what I'm seeing in this story is a long process of sanctification with Jacob, and we're blessed now to have Jesus as blessed in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, which kind of it doesn't stop you from going through the growing pains of changing, but it's kind of like more of a shortcut to get there, to get to the start of the race. But it just reminds you of my process and how I really came into the name that I use more often, and how I'm called Coach Kai at school, and it's like, people don't use my name. I rarely use my own name, only with certain people, but now it's like I can look back and be like, that's how Makai was, and this is how Kai is, and it's like it it was a process to grow into the name that I use the most, and it feels like the switching between two people, because at first I spelled my name Kai because I thought it was cooler because I was more infatuated with like the anime side of things, and I was like, oh, my favorite characters have the Kai, so it's like, but mine is Chai, and I changed it to that when I was like, man, let me stop trying to be somebody else, and that's when things started to
Mm-hmm.
spiral. But ultimately, I found my way back to light with Jesus, through,
What
through through the changing of my life. So I love how spiritual it is with the difference between Jacob and Israel, just like the difference between Emmanuel and Jesus, and it's really cool. I just think it's amazing that God always had the blueprint, but you just have to be able to read and understand, because I read through this the first time and I didn't see the parallels.
and this is where we have Bible study. And yes, Journey.
Oh, I was going to just kind of tag along to the end of what Makai said, as far as, like he read it the first time and it was just like whatever his interpretation of it, and then, coming to Bible study and getting another POV, not even a POV, just maybe understanding it a little bit different. And it's just like when we read to understand, sometimes we do have to read it multiple times. Or like, I'm pretty sure we didn't say all of the questions that we had. So, not being afraid to go back in, challenge yourself to like read a different version of what we went over today and just kind of, hear it worded a little differently. When you
Mm-hmm.
have other Bible studies, not being afraid to join other Bible studies. No, I'm already in one. Like everyone has different ways of teaching. Like I enjoyed today, but now it's like, okay, now that I kind of have little different sentiments about what I learned today, the best way to like re-go over and see how much you understand is to ask questions,
Mm-hmm.
to get those points of views from other people and kind of see how they interpreted it, the same way, we'll read what's going on in the shade room and, oh, you heard so and so, da da da. No, let's challenge ourselves to kind of reevaluate and talk about this. Like this is the juiciest tea you'll ever get. This is this is it. So, just to kind of circle back to, if you are still curious, because I know I am, going back and reading and, like just reevaluating it and be like, okay, wow. And then, just being able to meditate on the word and pray afterwards. Because this was this is really dope. This is really cool. So I appreciate that too. But yeah, just to tag along, never, be afraid of, oh, I didn't understand before, I'm just going to give up. Like, you never know what time is going to click. You never know what minister is going to be the one to make it click, and not just counting on those Sundays, because it could be these Bible studies where you truly thoroughly understand, and then use those other times to ask questions and kind of build off of that. So yeah.
No, you're right. And this is why churches is mainly for the masses. Bible study is for those who are trying to focus and really get into it. Sometimes going to church, you'll have a message, but it will never be revealed until you open it up and reflect on it again, which is why it says you reflect on it day and night. Something that I want to say about the identity, and then we'll pray and finish out. A lot of people don't realize that your name that you're given, and this is why it's so important on when you name children, so don't name them just anything crazy. The name that you bless them with also has a dealing with their calling. So you may be Ricky today, but tomorrow you're Richard. And the main point of that is Ricky was out here stealing and dealing and doing what he was doing with his money. But now Richard is teaching people how to manage their money and their finances and how to build wealth. Just because the name is a certain path, again, if you're being the wrong person, you end up taking that blessing, you can pervert it, disobey, go left. But I love this story because it shows the identity, the issue that we have with each other. Everybody has a personal identity crisis. When we're growing up, we're trying to find ourselves and this and that. But again, you may end up walking into your calling before it's time and not understanding what you need to do. So you end up perverting it. Again, like Ricky, he ends up stealing and dealing instead of knowing that as Richard, he was meant to teach people about money, the importance of it. Same thing with Jacob. He had this blessing, and instead of understanding what was supposed to happen once he got it, he still tried to operate as somebody else. He perverted it. And every time he tried to do what Jacob wanted, he got conned. He got tricked the same way he was tricking others. But as soon as he walked as Israel, everything started to subside. When he was Israel, he fought with God and prevailed. When he was Israel, he was able to stand in front of his brother with no fear. When he was Israel, he was able to walk away from that sin that was destroying his family and finally go back to go bury his father. So I'll go ahead and pray, and we'll end for tonight, and we'll have any other comments before we end out. But next Bible study, we will be going over the story of Joseph, part 1. That's chapters 36, 37, 38, and 39. And like I said, we're about to finish Genesis. We'll take a break after Genesis. We'll have our game night that we're planning. And we'll probably watch the movie, The Prince of Egypt, just to kind of get ready for the next book, Exodus. So we got a couple things planned up, and we're probably going to do it at the beginning of the year, but just stay tuned. So let's go ahead and, sorry about that. And okay. All right. I'll go ahead and pray, and we'll be good for tonight. So everybody close your eyes and bow your head. Lord, Father God, thank you again for today. Thank you for giving us a message, a word. Thank you for opening up our ears to be attentive for this time limit that we had. Lord, we ask that you continue to bless us as we sleep. Continue to let this word penetrate and filter into our bodies from head to toes as we sleep, so we can wake up with a new understanding and a new way of thinking. Every time we come to you, every time we see you, Lord, we want to be able to gain a new understanding, Lord. We ask that you continue to be with us, walk with us, protect us as we sleep, protect us so we can make it back for another Bible study in the future, Lord. Continue to be with us. Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
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 Amen. So I'll stop recording now.